骑着马的嘛。
One night, the entire village disappeared under the raging water. Bridges collapsed, houses were swept away, and rocks and soil from the mountains rumbled down like giant monsters, swallowing everything. The camera captured chilling moments, the echoing cries for help, the roofs being swept away, the smallness of people before the monstrous power of nature. This was no longer a normal flood. It was annihilation, a terrifying warning. Are you ready to see the whole shocking truth? At precisely 6:49 p.m. on June 23, 2025, the ground beneath Qingyuan City shuddered violently, as though some vast unseen hand had struck the earth from below. The earthquake, a magnitude 4.3 tremor, might have sounded small in numbers, yet its shallow depth, barely 10 kilometers beneath the surface, transformed it into something far more sinister. The jolt did not linger, but its impact was sharp, sudden, and unforgettable. Like a ghost rising without warning, the quake sent ripples through the Pearl River Delta, a region teeming with millions of lives. Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Foshan, Dongguan, and Zhuhai, cities of glass towers and pulsing industry, felt the earth shift beneath them, and in that moment, time itself seemed to falter. The first signs were deceptively subtle. Hanging lights swayed like pendulums in haunted houses, water in fish tanks sloshed violently against glass, and ceiling fixtures trembled with eerie precision. But then the buildings themselves began to move. High-rises groaned as their steel frames bent and twisted against the shockwaves. Windows rattled like chains in a crypt, and walls whispered with the vibration of Earth's hidden voice. In Guangzhou's Tianhe, Yuexiu, and Baiyun districts, countless residents froze in their apartments, feeling their towers sway in unnatural arcs. It was as though the entire city had been turned into a ship adrift at sea, rocking in the hands of an invisible storm. For those unaccustomed to such events, the sensation was more than physical. It was existential. People staggered out of stairwells, barefoot and disoriented, clutching children and pets in their arms. Some stood in open plazas, staring upward in disbelief, as if expecting the skyline itself to collapse upon them. In the streets below, horns blared as startled drivers abandoned cars, the panic spreading as fast as the tremors themselves. The earth had spoken suddenly, without warning, and the sound of its voice left nerves frayed and hearts racing. Social media exploded within minutes. Videos spread like wildfire. Footage of chandeliers swaying violently, desks vibrating in offices, and people running from buildings with fear etched on their faces. Clips replayed the shaking over and over, amplifying the collective dread. The digital sphere became a haunted echo chamber, where every swaying light and trembling wall was magnified into a symbol of nature's unpredictable menace. The quake was no longer a physical event confined to seconds of shaking. It was a shared psychological wound, replayed endlessly on millions of screens. In Qingyuan itself, closer to the epicenter, the quake's grip was harsher. Roads cracked, sending fissures crawling like black veins across the asphalt. Walls crumbled in older structures, ceilings split, and dust filled the air like a choking veil. Residents described the sound as a low, ghostly growl rising from beneath their feet, a sound that made them feel the fragility of their existence. Though no lives were lost and no towers fell, the fear was palpable. The quake had revealed how little control people truly possessed. And so, with just one jolt, the Pearl River Delta was plunged into anxiety. A tremor that lasted mere seconds had left behind an atmosphere of dread, tense, anxious, and unsettling. What struck hardest was not the damage, but the reminder that the ground, so often taken for granted as unshakable, could betray them in an instant. That betrayal, that ghostly movement beneath their feet, became etched into memory, leaving millions restless under the weight of the Earth's haunting unpredictability. In Guangzhou, the great southern city of gleaming towers and endless crowds, the quake's arrival was felt like a chilling hand pressed against every wall. The tremors did not topple skyscrapers, but they awakened a deeper fear. The realization that even the tallest, strongest structures could sway like fragile reeds. Residents in Tianhe, Yuexiu, and Bayan districts described the sensation in haunting detail. Their homes quivering, their high-rises creaking as though they had been transformed into ships lost on a stormy sea. For long seconds, buildings swayed in unsettling arcs, their glass windows shimmering like trembling mirrors reflecting fear. Families who once felt secure in the safety of their modern apartments were suddenly reduced to silence, their only thought a single primal question: will it fall? Inside countless homes, ordinary objects betrayed the quake's eerie presence. Ceiling lamps swung wildly, casting distorted shadows across walls. Fish tanks sloshed violently, spilling water onto floors, while picture frames rattled like teeth chattering in the cold. Even the smallest details, a teacup trembling on a table, a child's toy sliding across the floor, became ghostly reminders that the earth beneath them had turned hostile. To those trapped in the upper floors of skyscrapers, each second stretched into eternity. They felt the sway in their bones, a slow rocking that filled them with nausea, dread, and a chilling awareness of their vulnerability. Panic erupted almost instantly. People poured into the streets, barefoot and wide-eyed, some carrying children wrapped hastily in blankets. In plazas and intersections, clusters of families gathered, their faces pale as they pointed back toward the towers they had just fled. Others refused to re-enter their homes, choosing instead to wait under the open sky, whispering prayers and clutching phones that buzzed with updates. The soundscape of the city shifted. Alarms blared, car horns echoed, and above it all were the voices of frightened residents, voices that trembled like the earth itself. Social media amplified the terror. Within minutes, videos spread across WeChat, Weibo, and TikTok, showing haunting glimpses of the quake's impact. Fluorescent lights swinging violently in office corridors, chandeliers swaying above startled diners, and crowds spilling into streets while camera lenses shook with every aftermotion. In one viral clip, a resident filmed their entire living room trembling, glass doors rattling as if an unseen phantom were trying to break through. These digital echoes magnified the unease, turning private fear into collective dread. Even those who had not felt the quake directly were swept into its ghostly shadow by the flood of imagery. The panic was not only physical but psychological. People spoke of dizziness, a strange vertigo that lingered long after the shaking stopped, as though their bodies could not forget the sway. Parents struggled to calm children who refused to sleep indoors, convinced the walls would collapse around them. Elderly residents recalled distant earthquakes from their youth, their memories now awakened and sharpened by the tremors of this night. Even as officials assured the public there was no immediate danger, the anxiety hung heavy over Guangzhou, thick and suffocating. By nightfall, the city had been transformed. High-rises loomed like haunted giants, their steel skeletons groaning in the memory of the quake. Open plazas and parks became impromptu camps, with residents refusing to return home. Guangzhou, a city of lights and ceaseless energy, now felt subdued, fragile and ghostly under the weight of fear. The quake had not reduced it to rubble, but it had stripped away its sense of invulnerability. The people of Guangzhou discovered in those trembling seconds that even the most modern city can be undone by the unseen hand of the earth, and the knowledge left them restless, unwilling to trust the ground beneath their feet.